As a high-income earner, you have so many options with your money, but what should you do with it? We are answering that today with the help of a Reddit post in the Henry Finance subreddit by user professional hat355. This is the exact playbook which details what steps you should take with your money. And I'll be walking you through the guide and also adding my own commentary. So let's get right into it, starting with step number 1. The first place where your money should go as a high-income earner is to create an emergency fund with at least 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up to cover emergencies. The Reddit guide advocates for keeping 6 months of your expenses in a high-yield savings account or a treasury ETF like the ticker symbol SGOV for liquidity and safety. It goes on to state that if you have a larger balance such as over $50,000 in cash, you may want to consider a CMA account. That's a cash management account within a brokerage like Fidelity or Schwab. Essentially, all these options are basically similar. Or they want you to put your cash into a money market fund or some sort of liquid place where you get a competitive interest rate anywhere between 2.5 to 5% these days. My take on this is that the 6-month emergency fund recommendation is actually quite good. So, as a high-income earner, let's say you're making $150,000 or more per year, your lifestyle and your expenses are probably higher. You might have a mortgage payment on a nicer home, higher insurance premiums, perhaps you have a nice car, and you may be even paying tuition for your kids. If you lose your job as a high earner, it's often really hard to just quickly cut back on expenses. So I think the more you earn, the larger your emergency fund should be. The Treasury ETF or cash management account suggestion is pretty good too, because Henrys often make the mistake of letting large cash balances sit in their regular savings accounts earning only % or 0.01% when they could be getting somewhere between 2.5 and 5% with that same safety and liquidity. That extra yield on a $50,000 emergency fund could be around an additional $2,000 per year. The most important aspects here are maintaining liquidity while still making your emergency fund work for you in terms of earning money. All right, step number 2. The second place your money should go is toward maximizing your HSA contributions if you're eligible. An HSA is just a health savings account. And in this account, you can invest but also pay for qualified medical expenses. Now, the reason this article has it listed as number 2 on the priority list is due to a few reasons. First, the HSA is the most tax-efficient savings vehicle because it offers triple tax benefits. Number 1, your contributions are tax deductible. So that lowers the total amount of income tax paid in any given year that you contribute to it. Number 2, the growth of the account is tax-free just like the Roth IRA. And number 3, withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are tax-free as well. The biggest interesting point about the HSA here is that you can reimburse yourself in the future for a medical expense paid out of pocket today. So let's pretend you have a $2,000 medical expense that you need to pay today. Instead of using your HSA funds, you can actually pay for it out of pocket if you're earning a lot of income. Quote, this allows the HSA funds to grow tax-free while keeping the option to access your money for previous medical expenses. So as long as you save the receipt, let's pretend that 20 years later down the line, the $2,000 in your HSA has grown to $8,000. You can actually withdraw the full $8,000 and use the medical expense from 20 years prior to qualify it for tax-free withdrawals, which is pretty powerful. My take on the HSA suggestion here is that it's pretty spot on. I would say this step can be interchangeable with the next step, which is to max out accounts like the 401k and the IRA, but some people may want to prioritize this, especially if their employer matches some of the contributions in the HSA. It's also good for those people who want a healthcare emergency fund depending on their health. Now, the one thing you need to make sure of if you do have an HSA is that you are actually investing the funds. Too many people just start an HSA or a Roth IRA and they don't invest any of the funds. They just actually deposit money in there and they don't do anything with it. So make sure you are putting that money into low-cost index funds, and that way you will at least take advantage of the HSA's tax efficiency. Okay, so step number 3 is all about retirement contributions. That means contributing to your 401k, your IRA, or your Roth IAS. Now, 67% of people that watch our channel here are in the US. And so here in the US, we have employer-sponsored 401k plans, as they are called. But if you're in the UK, they have something called a workplace pension. In Australia, I believe it's called the superannuation. And in Canada, they have RRSPs. In any case, you want to be saving a percentage of your pay into a retirement fund. And a recommended goal by many experts is to set aside around 10 to 15% of your paycheck for retirement. And this ensures that you'll be able to actually retire comfortably. Now, in America, we have employer matches. So if your employer offers a 401k match, you always want to take full advantage of that match. To illustrate how this works, to make the numbers simple, let's say you make $100,000 per year, your employer may match up to 3% of your salary or $3,000 of your contributions into your 401k every single year. And you want to take advantage of that because it's free money from your employer. Another thing you want to take advantage of as a higher earner in America is seeing if your employer offers what is called a mega backdoor contribution. This allows you to contribute beyond the normal contribution limit of $23,500 per year. And lately, many companies are starting to offer this, especially in the tech field where Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon have all been reported to offer it. I will leave a full list of them on the screen right now that you can screenshot, but I will also leave a link to this resource down below that lists many of the different companies that offer a mega backdoor Roth. Typically how it works is that you'll contribute beyond the normal contribution limit into an after-tax bucket offered within your plan. You will then do an in-plan conversion to a Roth within your 401k, or you would roll that into a Roth IRA. Now, since you've already paid taxes on the contributions, you should not be taxed with this conversion, and that's why it's quite powerful. So if that sounds confusing, let's actually look at an example from an Amazon employee who earns $345,000 per year. They get the full employer match, and they are also able to contribute more to their mega backdoor contribution. You can see that if you're under the age of 50, you can contribute up to $69,000 per year into this account, including the match, of course, and this is extremely powerful in order to generate wealth over time. So yeah, besides contributing to your retirement accounts, make sure you check out if your company offers a mega backdoor of any kind. Besides that, just make sure you're contributing and investing consistently and regularly into your retirement account, as step 3 is pretty vital to growing your net worth. Okay, step 4 is to pay off debts with interest rates of 5% or higher. I love this take personally because I think there's some peace of mind factored into this step. First, the Reddit article says that if you are considering draining your savings, you should only do so for debts with interest rates over 10%. For debts around 5 to 6% of an interest rate, it's better to maintain liquidity and make extra payments rather than draining your savings. This is just due to the fact that the ROI and paying off debts over 10% is so good that you can dip into your savings. It's worth it to do so. And when it gets closer to 5%, that's when you can kind of take your time to pay those debts off in full. When it comes to your mortgage, the article suggests that you should not prepay a mortgage balance under $750,000 if you're still itemizing deductions. This type of recommendation is only good if you have a mortgage under $750,000. You're itemizing deductions, and if you have an interest rate low enough that perhaps investing would beat paying off your mortgage in terms of the return rate. For those of you that don't know, mortgages with balances under $750K in the US let you deduct all the interest you pay, provided that you are itemizing deductions. And so you actually have to do some work for yourself and figure out if itemizing deductions for your scenario beats out the standard deduction offered by the government without itemization. If you're married filing jointly, your standard deduction in 2025 is $31,500. So you will only benefit from this mortgage interest deduction if your total itemized deductions are greater than the standard deduction. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are married and in any given year you have the following mortgage interest at $25,000, state and local taxes at $10K, and charitable donations at $5K. That means your total itemized deductions here are $40,000. Since $40K is greater than $31,500, you should probably itemize to save some extra money on your taxes and then see if step 4 applies to you. The biggest priority of step 4 is to make paying down high interest rate debt your #1 priority. So if you do have anything over 10%, I'd say that's a really great place to start. Step number 5 today is to invest in a taxable brokerage account. So if you're a high earner and have already done steps 1 through 4, any extra savings can go into a taxable brokerage account for long-term growth. In terms of what to invest in, the guide recommends you invest in ETFs like VTI and VO and not individual stocks. Individual stocks can be exciting because of its potential for higher returns, but they are also much riskier. For example, let's say you have $1,000 and you decide to invest $200 into 5 different companies. I don't have to tell you this, but if one of those companies performs exceptionally well like Nvidia did recently, your $200 investment in Nvidia alone could turn into $600, $800, or maybe $1,000, significantly boosting your overall portfolio gains. However, the flip side is that if one of those 5 stocks that you chose for your 1,000 portfolio performs really poorly or perhaps goes bankrupt, your losses could outpace the overall stock market, especially in a bad year. For example, if the stock market is down 10% in any given year and you're invested in some companies that are down 50%, well, you're going to underperform the market in a more volatile year. Picking individual stocks can be a tempting way to try to beat the market and build your wealth quickly. But if you're not someone who likes to do a lot of research, or you perhaps don't have a lot of high conviction in any given stock, and you might not be willing to accept the fact that you're going to lose money, you might want to just stick to index funds. Index funds are a more passive strategy where you just set it and forget it, and then you rely on the market or the index that you're tracking. Whatever their historical average returns are is probably what you're going to get. So in the case of the S&P 500, you might get something between 8 to 10% every single year over time. Step number 6 is to figure out what to do with your RSUs if you have any. So RSUs stand for restricted stock units, and they incentivize employees to stay at the company they are at for much longer. For example, if you work at Tesla and as part of your compensation package, they offer you 4,000 RSUs. Well, that would be pretty nice because it's worth over $1 million. But usually RSUs have a restricted vesting schedule of 4 years, which means that you unlock 25% per year at a 1-year cliff. That means you need to stay at least 1 year to go over the cliff and unlock 25% of your Tesla RSU stock. Then after that, every single month, you will accumulate and unlock more shares. The 1-year cliff is then put in place so new employees just can't come in, grab the stock, dump it, and then leave. Now the guide wants you to sell the RSUs as soon as they vest. But I think this is entirely dependent on the type of company you're at and if you need the money immediately or not. If you're someone who believes in your company and doesn't really need the money right now, then perhaps you can just hold on to your RSUs because it could be a really great way to generate a lot of wealth if you're able to hold on to those shares and your company does really well. Now, the guide on Reddit wants you to diversify if you have more than 1 to 3 of your total investments allocated in your company's RSUs, which as a general statement I think is usually correct in order to avoid being too concentrated. Now, in some cases, you may just want to hold on to your company's stock, especially if your company is like on a rocket ship trajectory. And even if your net worth is all of a sudden a large percentage of that company's stock, it still might be better for you in the long run. For example, if you work at Nvidia and you had RSUs and earlier this year you knew that the AI boom was going crazy, would you really want to diversify away from one of the stocks that has probably the most momentum in the stock market right now? Probably not. So if your alternative choices of stocks are worse than the company that you work at, you may want to actually reconsider diversifying. Lastly, RSUs cannot be moved into tax advantage accounts like the 401k or Roth IRA. So the guide suggests you sell them and then use those proceeds to fund those accounts if you haven't already. This I'm pretty much okay with, but again, it depends on the situation that you're in. All right, step number 7 today is to have a well-diversified portfolio of equities in order to maximize long-term growth. The guide suggests having 80 to 100% in equities under the age of 50 with a small allocation of 5 to 10% in alternatives like precious metals or crypto if you're comfortable with that risk. After you're 50, you want to adjust downward to 70% or perhaps 60% equities to reduce volatility and preserve capital. So I think this recommendation is pretty spot on. I've shared on this channel before that the younger you are, the more risk on that you can be since you're in that phase of generating wealth. I don't really have that many comments for this step in general. So let's move on to step number 8. Step number 8 is all about protecting your income and assets through term disability or umbrella insurance. I personally think this step is optional, but in case you want some insurance, let's talk about the different variations of them according to this guide. Number 1 is term life insurance. This is better than whole life insurance in my opinion because the premiums are much lower and the terms are straightforward. The guide recommends you buy life insurance equal to 4 to 8x your household income. So let's use 6x as an example here and pretend you're making $250,000 a year as a household. You could then have a laddered term policy where you are covered for $1 million for 30 years and $500K for 20 years. That way, if you're currently the age of 35, you might have a $1 million policy covering you until retirement at the age of 65. And you'll have an extra $500,000 that covers you until the age of 55, perhaps when your mortgage is completely paid off. So from ages 35 to 55, you'll have a $1.5 million total policy when your needs might be the highest. Perhaps you have kids, a mortgage, etc. And from 55 to 65, you'll still have that $1 million in coverage, as perhaps it's at this point your kids are off to college and your mortgage is paid off. After the age of 65, though, you are on your own, but term life insurance is relatively cheap for the coverage that you do receive. So, with this type of policy, your premiums might be somewhere between $100 to $150 a month, compared to the $1,500 to $2,000 a month that a whole life policy might be. The second type of insurance is disability insurance. So, quote, if your profession relies on physical abilities, like if you're a surgeon, get an own occupation disability policy. Aim for 60 to 70% income replacement to protect your earnings in case you can't work. This just basically means that in the event that you cannot work, at least 60 to 70% of your income is replaced by the policy. Now, the third type of insurance is umbrella insurance. And this one's actually really important for high earners because the wealthier you become, the bigger target you are for lawsuits. Umbrella insurance will kick in when your regular auto or homeowner's insurance limits are exceeded. Let's say you are in some sort of serious car accident and someone sues you for $2 million. Your auto insurance might cover about $500,000, but that would leave you on the hook for $1.5 million. That could wipe out your entire net worth and future earnings, but a $2 million umbrella policy would be able to bridge that gap. The guide recommends at least $1 million in umbrella coverage, but honestly, as a high earner, you might want to consider something more than $2 million. And the cost for this type of insurance is pretty cheap. It's often usually just $200 to $400 per year for $1 million in coverage, and each additional $1 million might only cost you another $100 or $200 per year. So that's definitely good to have if you're a high earner. You don't need any of these insurance answers by any means, but some people just like to have them. So this was a complete 8-step financial playbook for high-income earners, and it's prioritized in order of importance. What I do like about this framework is that it takes the guesswork out of where your next dollar should go. And I really want to thank the Reddit user who actually compiled this for us. The key insight here is that being a high earner isn't just about making a lot of money. It's also about trying to convert that money into wealth that can last you a long time. So what step are you currently working on? Let me know in the comments below. And if you are interested in my video on how the rich actually like to think about money, you might want to check out this video right here. It's a really great one on the mindsets of the top 1% and beyond. So I'll see you guys in that video or a future one on this channel. Thank you for being here again. All right, peace.